Brian Slagle, are the Kings a bona fide Stanley Cup contender this year?
That's a very good question. I don't know. Are they a playoff team? I think absolutely. I think if they stay healthy and Kovalchuk fits in and the defense plays well and the bottom six forwards play well, if all that happens, if all of that magically happens, then yes, I think they can compete for the Stanley Cup. But that's a lot of ifs that have to happen. Like I said, I think they're bona fide. And look, clearly they've got some of the best players in the game. You've got, Kopitar and Doughty and Quick. I mean, anytime you have those three guys, if those three guys are playing at a high level and playing well, and if the rest of the team comes in, absolutely. But it's going to be a tough division this year. I mean, every team has improved themselves with the exception of Vegas, and Vegas is definitely going to come back a little bit, but how far they're going to come back, who knows? I mean, they're still going to be a competitive team. I still think they're going to win the division. But the Kings are going to be good. And the Kings.
Hold on. Vegas is going to win the Pacific Division?
Vegas is going to
Wow.
Didn't they win it last year?
They did win
pretty
it last,
easily, by the way.
They did win it last year. I just want to make sure I heard that correctly. Vegas wins the Pacific Division.
Vegas wins the Pacific Division.
Vegas does not win the Pacific Division.
Are the Kings a bona fide Stanley Cup contender, Dennis?
I will give you the key to this whole season. The 70s line. It's as simple as that. Carter was hurt last year, missed 55 games before that. The prior year, Toffoli was hurt. He had a leg injury. They have to have production from that. And I think that, if you watch the press conferences we were in last year, John Stevens was asking more from Toffoli and Pearson. I think those two players, I got to assume Carter's healthy. Those two players hold the whole key. If they are going to be a productive, dangerous second line, then absolutely they have two lines. We can talk about the third line all we want. That makes them a contender for the division. That makes them better than a 98-point team. It might moves them to 104, 105. That would win the division. And then if you're the 2 seed, you're a cup contender. It's simple as that. So I think the whole season, assuming health, is leveraged on that second line. If they can return to what they once were back in 14, then I absolutely think they can win the division, and I think they can be a very dangerous team in the playoffs.
Are Pearson and Toffoli only good when they play with Jeff Carter?
No. Sorry, I know you're not asking.
No, well,
but no.
Based on results, they are.
Well,
Right.
what if there is no 70s line come the trade deadline? Because if the 70s line, to your point, Dennis, about the second line, if the third line is solid, if you like that third line and they play well the first couple months of the season, and Kovalchuk is chipping in goals and the top line's playing, and Pearson or Toffoli are not generating the offense that they need to out of the second line, that's come trade deadline, that's where you're going to be looking to make a move. Right. That's when a defenseman is probably going to be dealt in order to get you some more scoring help, and the end of the 70s line takes place at the trade deadline.
And that's why the Heat signed Toffoli and Pearson this year. Absolutely, it's their time. They're going to become, they sign extensions, but they're looking for the next contract. And Tyler should be in this league if Carter's healthy, a 30-goal scorer. That's what the expectation is. And he really hasn't come through last year. I get the no Carter, but you know what? At some point, you have to overcome the fact that Jeff Carter's in there and make plays. He's that dangerous.
Well, let me ask you this question, because we're all talking about offense, and these guys have to score 30 goals and all this sort of stuff. Right. How do they do that, though, in the current system, the way the Kings play? The Kings play defense-first system. They always have. And that's why the numbers are not as great. That's why Kopitar's numbers haven't been huge. Do you think they're going to switch that a little bit this year?
I do.
Because they did the first part, but then the second part they went back to that kind of. And look, they finished the season, giving up the least amount of goals. But in the NHL now, you got to score the goals. So, and the system that they have played, it's hard to score those goals.
Well, they did improve the number of goals scored off, the team as a whole dramatically, and they moved from that bottom third up towards the top half last year, which is pretty amazing.
To the playoffs.
Okay, fine. And the other thing I want to say about Toffoli, you guys want to argue about the playoff series. I can argue that all day long. I don't care that they were swept. It was a 4-game series. One game went to double overtime. Every game was a 1-goal game. Yeah, and game 2, they missed 3 of the top defensemen.
Did you watch any of the games?
I did watch it, absolutely. And the scoreboard is the only thing that matters. So my eyes can tell me that this is a really fast team, but at the end of the day, their defensive-oriented structure held that other team to a 1-goal
scoreboard. They were swept by an expansion team, period.
But Vegas scored 7 goals in that
series. That means they're not a contender.
Vegas was not impressive in that series. They
scored,
were not impressive in that series.
They scured the least amount of goals to win a Stanley Cup.
They're so not impressive they went on and almost won the Stanley Cup.
In that series. I'm talking about that series. Nobody gave them a more challenging and difficult time than the LA Kings.
Not at all.
In the
Washington.
playoffs.
Not at all true. Not even
Washington, John.
Those games were even 5-0.
In those first 3 rounds, I'm saying. Yeah. They were 1-goal games.
They were contentious.
Because of Jonathan Quick.
But they were not a typical
Okay.
Spanish.
My point, though, back is Toffoli, and I hate to use the term puck luck, but let's also consider the fact that he led the team in shots last year. The guy gets a little bit more puck luck. Some pucks are going to go in. He's going to have a different season.
And he had 24, John. He just like he had 17.
This is not a guy that should have 24 goals, though. This is the only true, pure goal scorer that they have on the LA Kings.
Right.
Okay, Johnny Brzezinski is the guy who's supposed to do it. Carter is a mix of a playmaker and a goal scorer, right? That's why he's playing center.
That's why he's playing center.
Now, okay, but in the past, Tyler Toffoli was a pure goal scorer. That's his job. His job is to score goals. That's his only job, is to score goals. And this guy should be a perennial 35-goal scorer in the National Hockey League.
Yes.
This is a big year for Tyler Toffoli, and if he's going to be a 24-goal scorer, there's probably not room for him in Los Angeles because they have a whole team full of 24-goal scorers. They need a 35-goal scorer.
I'm not going to disagree with anything you said. I just want to, on this particular point, I just want to add, Toffoli doesn't get enough credit for being as solid defensively as he is, especially on the boards. And so I understand that doesn't alter the tag of being a pure goal scorer, right? But when you look at a team that wins the Jennings Trophy, and yes, Quick had a tremendous October and a tremendous March, but he had a rough January, like a really rough January. Right. But the defensive part, to Brian's point, is a team-wide commitment, and Toffoli is a pretty big part of that. What Dennis said about that 70s, and it is that 70s line, by the way, not the 70s line.
Yeah.
But
when Lucic
if
came
anybody
in,
was going to
it
make
matters.
It would have been Jesse.
But when Lucic came into LA, everybody assumed, oh, Lucic, Kopitar, Gaborik, that's the line. It's going to work perfectly, and it didn't. Right? And so what we wound up with was, at different times, Lucic, Kopitar, and Toffoli, Lucic, Carter, and Toffoli. You saw a different...
Dwight King with Kopitar.
I love Dwight King. But you saw
Trevor Lewis.
But you saw a bunch of different combinations, and with Kovalchuk, look, we don't know if the top line is going to be Kovalchuk, Kopitar, and Brown. The second line could easily be Kovalchuk, Carter, and Toffoli. The top line could be Iafallo, Kopitar, and Brown, and the third line could be Pearson, Kempe, and whoever. We don't know, right? Like you said, the point of bringing in a guy like Kovalchuk is so you can build a top nine, and you do have options that can slot and move and shift. And I just wouldn't be terribly surprised if that 70s line starts out the season together, but if Kovalchuk and Kopitar, for whatever reason, just the same as Lucic, Kopitar, and Gaborik, right? 3 great players that for whatever reason were more effective split up.
You make a good point on Pearson. You know, I think there's a proof of concept here because those 3 have played together well in the past. But I agree. I think maybe on a championship team, I brought this up to John once, maybe Tanner Pearson's a great third-line left winger on a championship team. Maybe he's not the second, because he went 24 and that was his career high, but maybe he's 15 to 17. And 15 to 17 on second line in the NHL is not going to be a championship roster.
He's still good value as a third-line left wing as well. That's one of the reasons
why value as a second-line player. Let's not.
No, there's good
not malign Tanner
Pearson
here.
Right? No, I'm not going to. But he's had 1 season of more than 20 goals. You know, that's not a top 6 player in this league at this point in time. Jeff Skinner would be the top line, would be a better productive player in that role. To go 24 1 year and then 15 and 17 and 12, like that's not your classic.
With your blender though, and you're putting them all together, you know the one thing that nobody ever talks about? 11 and 73. Why does Toffoli not get playing time on the top line?
Well, because Gaborik was around forever.
Okay. The Kings went through offensive woes last year. Why wasn't Toffoli given more of an opportunity, especially when Carter was out? And I know you want to balance the lines, but at some point, you have to put 11 and 73 together, and you have to give them a good 15 games.
Did they even play together on the power play at all? Not really, right?
No.
These are players that seem to not...
You wonder why. There has to be a reason.
They have to put your best center together with your...
For like 5 or 6 games at a stretch, they have played them together, and it always works.
Yeah, I don't recall 5.
Yeah, that's weird. I wonder, there's got to be some sort of behind-the-scenes reason, because it looks to everybody kind of obvious that they should be playing together. So, interesting.
Well, to John's point, if Tyler Toffoli, and he's at the point now, I think, in his career, he either is a legitimate NHL goal scorer or he's not. And if he is, and if he has the potential to be a 30-something goal scorer, then you have to give him the opportunity to prove it. So well, but Kopitar and Brown clearly have you know,
They play well
a
together. They always
chemistry
have. They always have.
So you're sort of but that's the point of a top 9. And look, Dennis, I looked this up just because I knew this was going to come up, the top left wing argument and what is or what isn't the top left. Tanner Pearson was the 34th highest goal scorer amongst left wingers in the NHL last year.
Right.
There's 31 teams. So ipso facto, at 34th most goals by a left winger, he's a second line left winger. Like, you know what I mean? We can tell ourselves what is and what isn't, but with
why are you so opposed to him dropping to the third line?
I'm not. No, I'm not. Whatever. Okay. If that's going to win the Kings more games, then fine. I'm always amused by these conversations about what is or isn't a top 6 player. When, like I said, there's 31 teams. You know, about 6 players per team. My math is not great, but I believe that's 180 players or somewhere in that neighborhood.
Right.
I don't know what the 180th leading forward scored last year, but it's probably not great.
So with all this talk,
you can't do 180 though, because you can't just
but that's
take a right wing.
No,
and move
I
him over to
understand.
the left side.
Some teams will have
but he's
more, and some teams will have less.
He's doing the math. So with all this talk about these,
last point.
So with all these top 9 we're talking about, and all the players we're talking about, we haven't talked about Trevor Lewis. So is he clearly going to be a 4th line guy, or does he fit somewhere on the 3rd line as well?
He opens up as the 4th line center, and what you have though is you have with the Velarde thing, the Velarde question mark that exists. If Velarde makes the team, he's your 3rd line right wing, and that also is a detriment to Johnny Brzezinski. Just